Hi, this is Charlie Mato-Toyela with another video from Blue Bear Flutes. Today's video is a little different. It's not something that you're accustomed to. No, it's not another storytelling video, and I know everybody likes those. We'll get to more of those soon. However, this video is going to show you something that is an old Native American, I guess a type of tradition, I guess we should call it. I'm not really sure what else to call it. And I've had several people have asked about it, and one good friend recently requested that I make a video for it, so I thought, hey, you know, I'll go ahead and make one. And so I'm not sure if we're going to start offering these on our website again. We used to, probably not. If you have a need for one, feel free to contact me anytime. You can contact us on bluebearflutes.com. However, what we're making today, and I guess I should start at the beginning, a lot of Native American people had tobacco. Tobacco grown naturally, not mistreated with chemicals or pesticides, not used recreationally. I don't feel really the need to put more disclaimers in here. But a lot of people had tobacco, and of course tobacco was a big and really prevalent part of a lot of Native American history and life and everything. From South America and Central America to north and all the way to the tip top of Alaska, people had something to use it for. Having said that, there is a type of pipe that many of you are familiar with. A lot of people call it a peace pipe. I grew up just calling it a pipe. It's not something that we called a peace pipe when I was a kid, but it is a interesting tobacco pipe that is made to use in ceremonies, and it's very special. It's something very, very important to me, and although I'm not going to have a ceremony and show you any of that on a video, I'm not about to do that, I thought that you might be interested how some pipe stems were made, and at least how they're made today. And I've actually making pipe stems I've been doing for about as long as I've been making flutes, and I know it seems like a niche business, but I guess so is flute making. So there was a time when we made lots of pipe stems. Having said that, what we're going to make today is a long Plains Indian type of twisted pipe stem. And I say Plains Indian type because usually they have some distance to them. We're going to use a piece of wood here that I've already split in half. It's a piece of eastern red cedar, real good wood to make pipe stems out of. And I've cut it right down the middle. And I know a lot of you out there are asking me questions about what size this is and everything. And what we're making, keep in mind, is the stem. That's always been my one saving grace here, is that I don't sell pipes. I've always made stems. I love making stems for people. However, I don't sell pipes. And I do like to make clay pipes. So if you see me at an art show somewhere selling clay pipes, that's a different story. That's a different type of pipe, a different tradition, and still tobacco, but for a very good reason that we offer that one. So feel free to ask questions if you have them. This piece of wood is about 1.25 inches wide, almost exactly, or 33 millimeters-ish. And when you look at this way here, it's about the same, so it's a nice little square. The length of this one, oh, got a little cut on me. The length of this piece of wood is about 24 inches, 23 inches, something like that. It's a little on the short side for some uses and a little on the long side for others. And what we're going to do is we're going to put a hole in the middle of it. In the old days, there were split pipe stems that were made out of two pieces of wood like this, just like in the old days there were flutes made out of two pieces of wood. And the split pipe stems were hollowed out inside and put back together, just likewise. There were some pipe stems that were made out of sumac, which is another favorite material of mine to make pipe stems out of. Some of them made out of small cedar or small pine trees, two reasonably common, somewhat special woods, you know, to people that make excellent pipe stems. And then, so we talked about sumac. Elderberry is a great material for making pipe stems out of. I've made some twisted pipe stems out of elderberry. However, the twisted stem we're going to make today is going to be out of this red cedar. So come take a look and see where we go next. Okay, so first off, my other disclaimer I'd like to put on this, be it political, social, or otherwise, I'm not instructing you to go out and make pipe stems. You can do that of your own free will. And if you do, I would hope that you would be absolutely careful, because if you're not making this with your mind, anything could happen. You see me get a splinter at the beginning of the video. There's that as a possibility. there's the possibility you can hurt yourself really bad on a tool like this. So please be careful. Work with your skill level. Grow in your skill level. You know, everything doesn't have to be exactly like I show, and God knows there's plenty of ways to go and route this track area out. There was a time that I used a router to take the center out of the pipe stem. There was a time that I used a Dremel to do it, and there's been a time that I've used a combination of the Dremel and the lathe if we ever make any of those more complicated types of pipe stems. But today it's just a straight stem with a twist on it, so we're going to use the table saw to do this. So there's lots of ways to do this. You can use a knife just to gouge it out. Just don't feel like you have to do anything exactly like I do. I'm just showing you the way that I've done it. So here's our 2 pieces of wood. It's got kind of a neat little face inside of it, which makes me feel good about what we're doing. And what we're going to do is we're going to cut a groove down the center of both pieces of wood, and then we're going to match them back up so that we have a hollow area through the stem for the smoke to go through. And I'm using a real narrow blade. Normally I used to change my blades out for this procedure because I like to use a wider blade. This blade, I believe, is about, yep, it's 1/8 of an inch wide, or 2/16 for those of you counting my 16ths on my measurement here. So 1/8 of an inch wide, which is kind of a narrow track for a pipe stem. I like to use it probably closer to 3 millimeters is my favorite. That'll be a pipe stem that'll last my whole lifetime. However, there's some considerations. When you're making the pipe stem, or when one is making a pipe stem, you want to consider the shank, which is where it fits into the pipe bowl. I may have a pipe bowl that I started carving somewhere laying around the shop. I can show you in a minute. However, it's been years ago that I started carving them for the sake of a friend or a gift or something. It turned out right or didn't turn out right. Anyway, long story short, this pipe bowls are usually made out of stone. And you don't want to push something in there that's going to cause the stone to break. So considering the stem, the shank we call it, that goes from the end of the stem into the pipe bowl, there's some things we need to think about. In the old days, people used to make a separate piece that went into the bowl and then it pushed into the stem. Not everybody did that. A lot of people did, however. These days, I like to build my shank on the end of the pipe stem itself so that I only have one piece there and it goes into the bowl. A little tricky, a little, careful, and you're going to have something nice. Having said all this, you don't want to make the inside of the stem so large that it requires a really large outside of the shank, and we'll show you what a shank is in just a minute in case you're curious. We'll not want to make one so large that the shank needs to be too big to go into the bowl. So, long story short, I like to make them between probably about 3 millimeters is really good. I use 3 millimeters as a measurement for a lot of things, which is about 1/8 of an inch. 4 millimeters might be a little on the big side, but once again, probably last the rest of your life. So, let's do this. In the old days, I didn't always use a caliper either. By the way, I guessed a lot of this. So these days, we want to measure how deep our blade is sitting so that we don't dig it out too deep. That's 5 millimeters, probably twice as much as we really need it to be. If we're going to make it 3 millimeters wide, or thereabouts, then we should make it about 1.5 millimeters deep, because each side is going to be gouged out the way that I like to do it. You could work with just gouging one side out. I know I talk a lot. This will make a lot more sense once you see it working. So we're getting close there. When it comes down to the last millimeter, I might just let it sit up a little high, and it'll be okay. Because once the wood hits the blade, you never know exactly what it's going to be. Let's leave it a little high there. Okay? And then we want to set this over, ooh, that's loud, over to the middle of the pipe stem, thereabouts, because I'm going to run it back through. Doesn't have to be exact, but I'm sure you can probably see right there the middle of the stem where it touches everything here is just about in the center. Once again, this ain't rocket science. And if you ride this over the blade without turning the blade on, you can kind of see how much that little depth there is going to be about how deep. This is the way I used to do it when I just kind of guess at it. It's going to show you about how deep it's going to cut. So let's take this over here. Let's lock our fence down. And then hopefully lots of people are going to enjoy this video. I mean, I like making pipe stems. It's been a passion of mine for ever and a day. I've made several for museums that were reproductions of old ones. I've made several for collectors, same wise. However, there was a time when we sold lots of pipe stems, and I enjoyed making them all the time. Because once again, some Indian people don't believe in selling pipes, and some do. Depends on where you're from and what you believe in. And no matter what, it seemed like everybody didn't mind if I sold pipe stems, so we always did it. Anyway, let's get started here. It's going to be a little loud. Put on some safety goggles. Safety first. Okay. Okay, so many of you seen me running my hands over the area where the saw blade is. That's crazy dangerous. However, I've done this way so long that I just really want to, it's kind of something I feel comfortable with. I'm not telling you that it's a good idea to ever do that. Oh, please don't ever do that. Did I show you this finger? Anyway, so, so if you look at the end of the stem here where we put this guy together, it actually worked out pretty good. You take a look right at the end of the stem there. See how nice and square it is? I've looked through it and can line it up, and it has a nice square hole all the way through. If I felt inclined, if I didn't like square holes in my pipe stems, take a piece of sandpaper. Usually I don't mind square holes in my pipe stems. There's another step that I like to follow that I'll show you at the last stage. However, you could go in and sand this guy, making it nice and smooth. Truthfully, you could probably create the entire track pathway inside of here with just sandpaper with a little bit of practice and skill. I know I've done a lot like that when I had to. Like when we used to live in Teotihuacan and we had solar power out there powering our saws and our tools. Sometimes you got to go by hand. There's a time we lived in Wyoming. We had power, however, it wasn't a whole lot. So there's that, and then just do the same thing on the other side. It's just going to smooth out some of the pathway inside, which will help out greatly. I know y'all didn't just see that, did you? I don't know if I can do it again. Yeah, hey, I did it again. That's pretty good. Okay. Getting a little too caught up with myself here. I actually judge how good my videos are going by how hard the camera person's laughing. If she's laughing hard, I feel like you guys ought to enjoy this. Yeah, that worked. You notice I go back and forth and change sides a little bit. That's so that I can kind of even it out a little bit there and get it how I want it. So, in the old days, split pipe stems may have been sealed together with pine pitch, pine resin. Could have been sealed together with beeswax, just like flutes, and also glue. You know, I've got a favorite photograph of about a 2,000-year-old Ojibwe box that was glued together like we make our boxes. Something else. I'm not going to talk about making boxes today, but like the boxes we used to make a lot of. This old Ojibwe box has got Ojibwe writing on top of it, and inside it's got a flute, and it's believed to be a song of how to play, you know, the special song written in ancient Ojibwe, which is kind of cool. However, you know, being the fine example that it was, it's also glued together. So Indian people knew about glue. A lot of people say, oh yeah, hide glue. If you're interested in finding out about ancient Native American glue, just Google hide glue. It might give you some insight into what was done. And a lot of things like this, back on track, were just tied together, not always glued or sealed in some way. If they were split, they may have just been tied back together. Today we're going to use a really good glue that I like to use. It is safe for making all kinds of stuff out of. I think it may have some description on the back of it for using on butcher blocks if you're making a butcher block or something like that. However, the glue that I use is just what I choose to use. You can use any number of other glue. Boy, that made a nice round hole. Wish I could see my eye through that. Anyway, so we're going to go ahead and glue this guy together, and I'll show you where we go next. So I used to have this one friend that made pipe stems as well. He made a lot of pipe stems like I did. Probably not quite as many as I have, but he made a lot. And he used to lay a piece of string or twine in the middle of the track area of the pipe stem. This is for obvious reasons. If you glue something like this, it's possible that some of the glue will make its way inside of the track area of the stem. Now, having said that, I have always been a little extra careful, and I'll show you what else I do in just a second. If my camera person doesn't mind grabbing me a glue rag, should be one laying around anywhere. So we just kind of follow along. I just like to use some type of adhesive that's natural enough that it's non-toxic and makes a good seal. You know, that's important. And this glue here is reasonably permanent. Should probably have been a spokesperson for them a long time ago. I like the glue. And now that we've glued this thing, or put the tracks of glue, I'm going to take just a tiny little piece of the cloth and wipe it all the way down to make sure that I didn't get any in the track. And it'll also take away a little bit, about a ½ millimeter on each side, so that hopefully it won't squeeze in there. My friend I mentioned used to pull a piece of string on the either side like this, and when he sealed it together and glued it, he would pull the string out, pulling some of the glue with it. But just like my procedure, there's nothing you can do to keep all the glue out. Except for, as somebody just said in the video, that's right, I hear you. Don't split it in the first place. Yes, it's possible to make a pipe stem without splitting it. Did ancient Indian people have a drill bit that would reach, 24 inches? No, not to my knowledge. Most likely not, let's say that. The people down in Colombia, I've seen some masonry work that they've done. I wouldn't have been surprised if they had a laser that could have done that, but drill bit, hadn't seen any of those. Yes, 10,000 years ago, a laser. You heard me. Pompoko. Wait, no, that's a movie. Now the camera person's going. I of course mean Puma Punku. Pompoko was actually a Jap anime that we enjoyed watching quite a bit. But Puma Punku is a neat place and culture to look up. Okay, so we come back, we've got it glued, and I went ahead and planed it down with our planer. All that did was take the glue lines off the outside of it, and I squared it up a little bit so it's more of a nice square. I've blown through it. I can actually still see through it. There's a couple of spots of glue I'm not real happy with, but once again, part of the way I do things these days. And you can still blow through it, which is great. I have a rod over here that I was going to heat up. What I used to do is use just a long coat hanger and heat it up and push it through. But these days I've learned one more quick little step. So I guess while we're waiting on that rod to heat up, which will take in just a second, I'll go ahead and round it off. So you at home, make sure you use ear protection. So, let's see, reasonably round now. And we'll just, probably could do a lot of hand sanding on this one just to get it clean. Looks like my rod is hot, so I'm going to lay this guy right here. Not really necessary to do it this way. Just what I've learned, it helps me out. No, I can't see through it at all. Atypical. Murphy's Law, I guess. Still blow through it, which means it's still reasonably clean inside. And I have another rod here, but we use it for so many other things. Let's see. Feels like it's getting hung in there anyway. Oh, that's better. Much better. Much better. I think that's got us. Didn't even heat that one up. Okay, so one of the next steps, of course, is going to be to sand it smooth. We'll do that, and then I'm going to put it on the other router table, and you'll see where we'll go from there. Okay, so now we have a nice rounded piece of material, piece of red cedar here. I even went ahead and rounded the mouthpiece. May not be the way that my friend wants it to be. He may decide to put the little end on it like a lot of them you see, but it's nice and clean inside. A little sawdust there, and I'll show you still what we're going to do with the shank. Once again, he may want to change it a little bit to fit the size of his pipe bowl. However, that's something he can take care of. I do like to at least shrink the shank down a little bit so that you know where it's at and all that kind of thing. So now it's the part that everybody's been waiting for. You suffered through 20 minutes of this video to get to this part of the whole deal. This is how I make the spiral with simply just a router table. And I used to use a router crafter. It's a tool that is typically made by craftsmen that has a router sits on top and you twist a handle and it makes spiral staircase legs. I've used those for a long time. I used to do it manually too. This is the more manual way that's not just using a knife or a rotary tool. This manual way makes it a little quicker. And if you just, like me, if you just imagine, this is just a giant one of these. I've actually got a table to mount these things on, this little Dremel rotary tool. I've got a table to turn it into a small router table. And this is just a bigger version of it. 2.5 horsepower of finger ripping off fun. Camera person. Anyway, so let's take a look at this and see how we're going to shape that spiral. So the depth of my cove bit, my box core box, flute bit, whatever you want to call it, this is a little 3/4 inch wide cove or core box bit. Everybody knows that I use only 3/4 inch wide for most of our flutes. This guy here is going to dig up into that for me to make the spiral. If you noticed, the height of it right now is about the same level as the center piece, so we're going to turn it down just a little bit so that we don't cut so deep into it. I think probably right around there-ish should be fine. If you need a measurement for that kind of thing, I can tell you. Right now, at this time, this guy is about 1 1/8 inches, and the depth that I have my bit set to is about 7 millimeters. Normally our A flutes are about 9.5 millimeters deep with the 3/4 inch wide router bit, so I've moved it down to about 7 millimeters, which looks like it's going to clear the yeah, that clears it fine. You'll have plenty of room left over after that. So we want to mark where we're going to start our spiral. So we're going to put the shank from about here down, and then we're going to put the spiral. I usually like to do a couple of inches up here. This spiral will start right here, and I'm thinking about ending it, say, right around there. How about that? So we'll do that, and then let's get some ear protection on. One other thing that would be handy is if I put a screw right here that let it poke out so that I could see where I was actually digging. But in my mind, I've done this enough times that I don't really need the screw. I'm just going to start like that. Okay, so let's see where we go from here. Now, if you noticed, the fingers didn't get anywhere near the bit that time. That's important. I started off with a very gradual spiral, and then I kind of sped it up a little bit here at the end, just the way I wanted to do it this time. I also landed within a reasonable area, but the thing that I was looking for when I was stopping my bit was I wanted it to stop on the opposite side of this one, so it's really close to the opposite side. And just what I wanted to do at the time. It's not necessary. You can kind of plan these things out yourself however you like to do it. The next step is where that screw sticking right in here would come in really handy, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow this visually, imagining that there is something right here keeping it following that trail. So that's where, like I say, if I put a screw in there, it would be much easier to follow. However, we'll pick up all the slack on the back end of what we're doing now just by hand sanding and using a couple of sanding drums to get that straightened out. Let's go ahead and do this next part. Watch fingers. That's quite a nice little spiral. I'm very proud of that. So once again, just a little practice. Take my headphones off, and my headphones off of this camera person. Thank you, camera person. So if the camera's jiggling now, looks like you might need some air on that lens. that looks like. You guys will have to tell me. Was that interesting? Anyway, so our next step, very simple. Use a sanding drum here. Not quite sure what size it is. It looks like it's about the same size, maybe 1 inch is what I'm thinking. And if you want to just come back out here and follow me. Now, there's a number of other ways you could do this kind of crazy thing. You can do a lot of it by hand, which I have done for years and years and years and years. I don't know if many of you know how the dugout canoes of the world were created. However, you may get an idea after you watch this. With red cedar, it has a tendency to dry out and to crack if you're not careful. However, in all my life of flute making and pipe stem making, I've noticed that torching it in one place doesn't tend to dry it out as quickly or as much. It could. You see, it may actually form some cracks or might cause your glue to shrink. It can cause a number of things to happen. However, just lightly here should not be a problem, as I have done this quite a bit. Okay, let's do the other side. This actually helps to shrink some of the scar tissue and burn off any fine fibers that are poking up. You see them glowing right there? Those are some that my sanding didn't get. If you notice, it did open a little crack up right here. I might seal that off. However, I'm going to look at it and determine if it needs to be sealed or not. And the glue that I used is actually moderately fireproof and definitely heat resistant up to like 400 and something degrees. So as long as we don't sit there and cook it, it's not so bad. Okay, let's see, that actually turns pretty nice looking after a little while. Let's see what kind of sandpaper I've got that I don't mind getting soot all over. Here's a piece of scrap. If I was making a larger spiral, I would decide to go back in and hit it at another angle. On the router crafter, that's pretty easy because there's a little pin that you can just twist it over to the next notch and start over again. However, by hand, it's a little different story. It's not impossible or not really even tricky. It's just time consuming, but not terrible time consuming. One other thing that I've done a lot with making spiral pipe stems, depending on the type of spiral that I want to make, is I will put this on the sander. And if you hold it on the sander, at the angle that the sander fits in that groove, you can spiral it down carefully. It's kind of tricky. When I say you, of course, I mean you metaphorically. One can spiral it down. I am not telling you to try putting a twisted piece of wood on a sander. That is up to you to decide in your life. However, I will show you another very crucial part of this. Let's see, it does have to do with the sander. Let's turn it around this way. Now, one thing I will mention is that over the years of making pipe stems, I just about always make the spiral go in the same direction. I rarely start it on this side and spiral that way. I don't know if it's because I'm in the northern hemisphere or what, but that's just all that camera person. Let's see. Anyway, so honestly though, one of my favorite old-time pipe stems that I've seen, and it may have been one that a friend of mine reproduced too, because I've got a couple friends that still make them from time to time. One of them has some fine spirals in it, and they spiral this way kind of large, and then they start spiraling the other way really quick. And that one was a neat one, very unique. And let's see, we are so very close. Most of the ones that you see that have been maintained over the years, whether they be in a museum or someone's collection or some special person's special type of care, we'll leave it at that. Whichever ones you see, most of them you see are plains or maybe some type of Western culture. You don't see a whole lot of Cherokee ones, although I have seen a couple. And seen some really nice ones too. Really nice ones. I'll show you a few other things that you may do if you were making a pipe stem like this. Okay, this actually, I think this guy here is really close to being done. One other thing you may decide you want to do is make the size of this area smaller. You can do that the same way you got it the size it is now in the first place, whether that be a lathe or a sander or by hand, or you can even use this thing to do it. With this router here, we could actually set it up and gouge a nice little band around in a circle, which would look kind of cool. Guess I need to make myself a new pipe stem one day. Something about making pipe stems has always been very inspiring to me. That cleans it up quite a bit. Let's blow it off and see how that looks. Pretty nice. Double check some things here. A couple of rough spots there, probably hit with some sandpaper. One right there. Maybe just a little bit more sanding. Okay. So I think that's actually got it there. Just one more time with the fine paper. And now let's go carve the shank into it. I'll show you how we do that on the sander. So when I was a kid, I didn't have one of these fancy side grinder sanders like this. And I say this one's fancy, of course. It's kind of a low end, but it's still fantastic. I'm about to upgrade to a new one once we get moved into our newer shop. However, I used to use something very similar that we had, back in the old days. We didn't have such fancy tools. We had a wash machine motor with what my dad called a mandrel on it, or a mantle. That's what it's called, I believe, a mantle on it. And the mantle had a piece of sandpaper sandwiched in between two washers. And it worked pretty good. It took a little practice getting used to it. This right here is great, and then of course we could always finish up on this guy. So let's take this guy back over here and see what else we can do with it. So we've got about a 1/2 inch shank here now, which is fine. That's probably too big for most pipe bowls. However, my friend may decide he wants to make it smaller or leave it that size, fit it to the bowl, however it works out is fine with me. And like I said, with regards to this, you could shrink the mouthpiece down. You could taper it, which is one of my other favorite things to do. And my camera person was just talking with me about it as we were transitioning, that she really likes to see the smaller spirals, and that's another style of pipe stem. And I mentioned too that I've actually made some that are flat stems that are twisted. That's another style that's been around for a long time. The last thing, since it's sanded finally and everything, and oh, I checked it, one thing you might want to do, push your finger over the end. If you can't see smoke or dust blowing out of it anywhere, then it's sealed off really good. Otherwise, you might have a leak. So let's go ahead and oil this guy real quick and see how he looks. Anybody wonders what kind of oil we're using? This is a mixture of sunflower and tea tree as well as peppermint oil. It's what we use in all of our flutes. It smells a little nutty, kind of neat though. It's really good stuff. And it is good because the sunflower oil is very viscous and very natural, by the way. That's something that I like a lot. So it's very viscous, and being that it's so viscous, it soaks into the wood really well. Sunflower oil, being the natural oil that it is, has the opportunity to go bad. Will it go bad? I don't know. It's kind of up to the oil and whatever things are in the general environment. So that's why we mix a tea tree oil in it as a preservative. After putting the tea tree oil in it, it probably won't ever go bad forever and a day. And the peppermint oil is something we use with our flutes because, as I had mentioned before, it helps keep arachnids and other bugs away from everything, which is great. Garlic oil does that too, but which one would you rather? Oh, your flute, garlic oil or peppermint oil? Wow, look at that. This is a wax cloth that we use. It's just got wax all over it from making flutes. And it is now oiled and waxed. A couple more applications of wax like that and it will probably be good indefinitely. And I think I really like this guy here quite a bit. This is a nice pipe stem. So if you can see the shine, the color, the black around the spiral there makes it look really sharp. Really a pretty quick build for a such a beautiful thing that has such amazing usability. Really nice stem here, and I think that we're done with it. I think I'm happy with that. So make sure that my friend's ready for it and we'll send it on his way. Anyway, if this is something that you're interested in, if you like to see me building things like this, feel free to leave a comment, preferably positive, and send us a little message. Subscribe to us because we make a lot of Native American flutes. We make a few other things too from time to time, and we also have some great videos that are storytelling and also some instructional information for you. If you're learning how to play the Native American flute or want to know about this or know about that, there's some means in there I think that might be kind of fun for you. Anyway, my name is Charlie Mato-Toyela, signing out for bluebearflutes.com. Please subscribe to us here on YouTube, and we hope to see you again very soon. So take care, and thanks again.